Well, welcome to another chat with Tim. And I've been sharing some of my favorite metaphors about recovery. Today I want to share a couple that really have to do with a common issue for many in recovery, and that is getting frustrated with how slow and messy and sometimes painful recovery can be. And that it takes a lot of hard work. It takes time. It's difficult. And we need to accept the process. We need to realize there's not a quick magic fix. There's not an easy road. And so these two metaphors to me help with that. And I hope they will again put it into perspective for you in a way that encourages you if you're feeling a bit discouraged in your journey right now. So the first is farming. So a farmer begins with a seed. Now the goal is it's going to end up being a crop. It's going to be corn, it's going to be wheat, it's going to be some vegetable, but it starts with a seed. And he puts the seed in the ground. Now here's what a farmer knows. It's going to take time, so he has to be patient. It's going to take a lot of work, but he is the one that must provide the right environment for that seed to flourish. And if he provides the right environment, that seed will grow and become a great crop. And so what is this right environment? Because that's what you're providing in recovery. You're the farmer. You are nurturing this little seed, which is you, so that you can grow and flourish and be a healthy, productive person. So there has to be the right amount of water, the right amount of heat, the right amount of fertilizer or food, the right amount of sunlight. You have to be able to protect it from insects, from animals, from parasites, from disease, from weeds, from drought, from frost. There are all kinds of potential enemies that could destroy that plant. So it's not just making sure it gets the right ingredients, it's protecting it from the things that would rob it of those ingredients or rob it from growth. So let me just do a little aside here. That's why for some plants in some climates, they need a long time to grow, and the climate doesn't allow that length of time. So you start it in a greenhouse, a protected environment, a kind of a pseudo environment where you have the right light, the right heat, and you can control all of that. Many people, I think, in the beginning of recovery need a greenhouse environment. They just need an extra protection from so many of the things that are out there that would destroy them, that they're not strong enough yet to handle. So parasites in recovery, man, those are the people that want to use you, that want to take advantage of you. They're out there everywhere. Weeds in recovery, those are those old friends that want to choke the life out of you. Those are the old behaviors that want to come back and choke the life out of you. And so a farmer realizes that they have to be ruthless almost when it comes to weeds. They can't just say, oh, we'll just allow them. They're not that big of a deal. They're kind of cute in the beginning. No, they realize that weeds grow faster than plants. Weeds drive their roots faster into water and take all the water. Weeds destroy plants. You cannot develop a friendly relationship with weeds and just tolerate them and think they're not a big deal. You have to be able to see they will destroy everything if they're allowed to grow. And then there's animals that come and want to eat the plants. And many animals are so cute and you think they don't look like an enemy. But you have to be wise that even cute little animals can destroy everything. And then there's disease. And so if a plant isn't having its needs met, it's subject to a disease. And so the same with us. If we're not taking care of ourselves physically, emotionally, spiritually, intellectually, we're very vulnerable to disease. And so we have to provide a safe environment. That's the farmer's job. But that's not a 9-to-5 job. That's a 24/7 job. It requires the right priorities, discipline, consistency. And here's what I want you to see. If taking care of the seed isn't the farmer's top priority, if hanging out with his buddies is, if a hobby over here is his top priority, if laying around all day and having an easy life is his top priority, the seeds will never make it to maturity. He needs to have his priorities that the seeds, I have to provide the right environment, and that might be a 24/7 job. Doesn't mean I'm working 24/7, but I'm attuned 24/7, and I'm available if needed 24/7. That is the reality of farming. Now, there's elements of farming that you can't control. You can't control a drought. You can't control an early frost. You can't control too much rain, a flood situation. But farmers can kind of have contingency plans if those happen. They can irrigate. They can have things that cover the plant so the frost doesn't kill them. And so what you need in recovery is a realization that I will be blindsided at times by things I can't control, things that threaten me. I might not be able to totally ameliorate their effect, but I can have plans in place that if this happens, I can do this, and that's going to help a lot. So remember again that farming requires patience. If you have an impatient farmer that's out there every day trying to force the seed to grow, speed up, it could kill the seed. It has to accept the length of the process. And the same is true in recovery. So that's farming. The second one I love is that of the process of turning a lump of clay into a beautiful pot. And so we go to the metaphor of the potter and the clay. Let me just say a couple initial things to this that I think are important. So recovery to me is, here's a person that's been so beaten down by life, that's been in survival mode, that's got all these maladaptations. They're kind of this lump of clay that doesn't look very beautiful, that seems very damaged. Is it possible for a potter to come along and work with that clay and bring something beautiful out of that lump? That is, to me, yes. The answer is yes, it's possible. But this metaphor can give the wrong impression. For it's used by many people to say you're going to outsource your recovery to somebody else. Somebody else is the potter. God, another person, they're going to come and they're going to mold you into this piece of clay. So you don't have any agency. You basically are going to be magically fixed by them. It's going to bypass the slow process. It's going to bypass all the hard work, working through all the painful emotions. You're outsourcing your growth to somebody else. The other thing that this metaphor often can say is that everything that happened to you, all of the things that made you that lump of clay, they're part of a plan. They're actually good things. And I go, whoa, that's to say to a child that was sexually abused, that was really good that you were sexually abused. That's all part of a plan. To me, that can do so much damage, and it can invalidate real harm. And it can actually say that real harm is a good thing. And so here's the metaphor I want to use. So I'm going to change it. You had a potter in your life called Mom and Dad. They created this piece of clay that isn't that wonderful. That's what you have today coming into recovery. And so what happened in the ancient world is sometimes a potter would work with a piece of clay and would not be happy with the results. And so he would just kind of smush it back down and start again. And so in your situation, the first potters, they kind of messed up the clay. And now you've smushed it down, and you're the second potter. You're now part potter. That's what this reparenting is about. And so that means that you now are the one that's going to shape what you become. You can soften what was too rigid. You can strengthen what was too fragile. You can begin to shape the vessel that you want, that is healthy, that is beautiful. That's the metaphor that we're using. So let me just walk you quickly through the process of taking this lump of clay and making a beautiful pot. And what I want you to see is a process. It's slow. There's elements in it that are very painful, especially if you're the clay. So you start out and the potter chooses the clay. And he looks for certain qualities in the clay to make sure it's clay that can be molded. Then he wedges the clay, and that's basically like kneading bread. And he's pushing all the air out of the clay, but he's making sure all the clay now has the same consistency, and he's stimulating the clay particles, and they call it making the clay willing to be transformed. That's a part of early recovery, is you're working the clay, you're making the clay consistent, you're making the clay willing to change. But if you're clay, this part's kind of painful. This part isn't a whole lot of fun. The next thing they do is they center the clay on the spinning wheel, and then they open the clay. So stick a finger or thumb down and begin to open the clay so that the beginning of a pot begins to form. And then they do what's called throwing a bowl. And that's basically shaping the clay into what you want the end result to be. A bowl, a lamp, whatever. And then once that is done, you trim the edges, you put the finishing touches on it so it looks aesthetically pleasing. And then you throw it into the kiln, to the oven. You fire the pot under intense heat for just the right amount of time so that the clay cures and becomes strong. And then after that, in some cases, you then glaze the pot and then you fire it again. Now, just think of that from a standpoint of a piece of clay. You wedge the clay, that can be painful. You shape the clay, that can be uncomfortable and painful. You trim the clay, that can be uncomfortable. You put it in the fire, that's painful. Then you glaze the clay, well, that's uncomfortable. A lot of fumes. Then you get fired again. There's a lot of elements to this process that involve pain. That's what I want you to understand. So the process takes time. It's not just some little instant transformation. There's elements that are painful that even from the perspective of the clay feels kind of cruel. And they don't understand the forces that are shaping them, the process that they're involved in. And so it's confusing at times and seems a bit cruel. But here's what I want you to see. The clay is being reworked, not discarded. And something very beautiful is being brought out of the process. But you have to accept the process. So you are part potter. You have this piece of clay. We understand what the process involves. Now you can engage in the process and begin to shape yourself into the pot that you've wanted to become.